Welcome, crypto enthusiasts, to the Independent Reserve Podcast.
Episode 30 of the Independent Reserve Podcast. Today with Rob Morris. Rob, I was looking at your LinkedIn profile and to do some research, and there was so much stuff going on that I just decided to not even worry about doing an introduction. There's like 56 things that you put on there from, and as I think you've listed yourself, this is probably the best way to do it: entrepreneur, angel investor, advisor, technologist, which is probably a better summary of going through there's like 40 odd like angel investor projects that you've been involved with, even more as an advisor. Your serial startup.
I've done a lot of things. Honestly, I don't even put everything on LinkedIn. I just, I can leave a bunch off because it's already too confusing as it is.
I know, but so I was like, which stuff did I want to like single out as being like, you're known, I guess everyone knows you, particularly on the tech side. Prismatic was always a thing I guess I knew about, and that's been going for 13 odd years or whatever.
Yeah.
But there was one thing on LinkedIn which I'm going to pick on, which was back in 2013 at Event Cinemas, you were a gold class butler.
Oh, right. That was a project.
Oh, okay. So you weren't even a butler.
Yeah. So actually that one's actually an interesting story. I have to be careful, I think, about exactly how much I say on air, but the very high level was that we were hired to help Event Cinemas. We made an app called Gold Class Butler. And what that meant is that in Gold Class, you could order the food from your seat, right? Mm-hmm. Sounds great. And actually it was very interesting because we rolled this out as an experiment, and I think it was like, it doubled the average revenue per seat. Like, we're not talking like per occupied seat. It's pretty much like the whole cinema. So you could have like whatever, a fraction of the people in there, but revenue would go way up. But the reason that they ended up scratching it was because it was a real pain in the ass to train the staff, which I thought was just like, honestly, I'll put this on the record. I thought that was such an own goal. It's like you're doubling the revenue from an app, and customers love it, and
you just couldn't
bother
bother
training the staff. And
That's
like, like, what are we doing? So that was that project.
I didn't realize it was the appy, but I figured there was some time because that was 2013. So you're probably similar-ish age to me. I know you finished high school a few years before me, but I didn't think in 2013 you're working as a butler, given that.
Well, I actually did do promo work as part of that app at the.
So we can say you were
dressed
a butler.
as a butler.
No way.
I actually went to the cinema. It's one of my favorite things, right? Like, I was years ago I was doing a bunch of stuff with women in tech. So I helped get Elevaco off the ground, and Tech Ready Women in particular. Elevaco was a non-profit. Tech Ready was like a philanthropic investment, and I was kind of notorious for like, I'd be at one of the parties and I'd be like the bartender, and I'd be like making the cocktails, and then there would always be someone who'd come in and just think that I was a bartender and be like treating me like a random. And there was one, I won't name any names, but there was one where it was actually a guy who was trying to get me to invest in his business that he never met me, and he was total dick to me because he thought I was one of the service workers, and the guy next to him was like, and then eventually he like gets someone tells him, and he's like, needless to say, I didn't invest in that guy's startup.
That's incredible. Well, there you go. It's like,
so it's fun.
It's a great way to assess. You know what I mean? Like when people do the assessment of like, how do you treat the people who you think you don't have to be nice to?
Yeah, it really is a good test.
It's a great test.
It's not like my original idea, but I do quite enjoy doing that kind of stuff. Like I like being a bit outside of the box, as you probably noticed.
I've gathered. Yeah,
on Twitter I just put like intransigent coffee fiend as my primary.
But it's like, where do we pick on this? I mean, like I said, when I was looking through a lot of the stuff you've done, and you haven't even listed all the projects you've been involved with. Safe to say that if there's been some new cutting edge or just any form of new technology business in the last 20 years, somehow you've been involved with it.
It's what I like doing. Yeah. So, I guess I'll tell a brief version of the story, but I mean, like, I've always been very interested in emerging tech. I think maybe that journey really started, he said, let me bring up, in primary school. But, I guess I think I like see the world in the future a little bit. And so, when I was really young, I just thought I was crazy because everyone always disagreed with me, and I hadn't had any evidence that my ideas were good yet. So I really spent like, a long time thinking that I was just basically an idiot, right? And then I dropped out of high school in the 90s. And so I went to my headmaster and I said, look, I know that's not a thing that we do, but you and I both know I'm not going to do well at the HSC. It's got nothing to do with, me being smart. I'm just not interested. It's not for me. What I would like to do is I'd like to go out into the real world and I'd like to get a job. I'd like to come back and start year 11 again next year. There's a chance that might go well, but if I stay, it's just a waste of time. And so, much to my surprise, this principal of Fort Street High, was like, okay, let's do it. Right.
No way.
And so they sent me to go see a psychologist and a few other things. And the psych was like, yeah, this guy, his head's screwed on. Like, let's give him a chance. So I did. And I went out and got a job at an internet startup. It was called Extreme Net Services. It was in Redfern, but, back when Redfern was still a bit rough in that part. And we were doing things like testing video games and putting restaurants online, like 1996 or something, before anyone knew what the web was. So that was basically my first job for an internet startup. And it just went from there. And I kind of just, I did go back to high school and I dropped out again and I, did tech support and then I got into programming and so on. And then I just kind of went from one thing to the other. And so I was there for the rise of the web. I was there for the rise of social. I was there for the rise of mobile. I was there for the rise of crypto. And just wherever the frontier is where I like to be. Yeah. I like the unexplored terrain where we have to figure it out for ourselves. Yep. Once we know how to do it, I kind of find it a bit boring.
That doesn't surprise me at all. Yeah. That fits very much in. Hey, gaming has always been something because Underwear, you've got a project now which you're doing as well, which is all about gaming. But like I said, man, I've genuinely I started when I was doing the research. I was like, you know what, it's right out the window. I'd rather just hear from you directly. Yeah, what the journey's been like and what are the highlights. I mean, with what is all these big lessons that you've learned along the way? You've been, as you've said, on the frontier of new emerging technology. So it's absolutely no surprise to see you here in crypto, doing what you do best. There was I'll start off with a story. I remember, this is 3-4 years ago. You probably don't even remember it because it was just another day for you, but we were having a chat at one of the blockchain weeks. I think one of Steve Alice's sort of things. This is a few years ago, back at Central Station. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that one? I mean, whatever it was.
Yeah, I think so.
And some other guy, I can't remember who it was, came up and started chatting to you about a particular problem that he was facing. And I remember you going, oh, yeah, no, it's easy. I've already looked at this problem before. And he was kind of like, what? What do you mean? We've been battling with this for 6 months. And you reeled off something. I don't know, I'll be honest, I could not understand a word you said because it was above. I didn't understand the technique.
I don't remember the specific conversation, but it sounds about
right. And
I
remember going, I don't know what you just said, but my only thing I could do was read the reaction of whoever it was you were speaking to. Was kind of like, oh, shit. I've been working on that problem for 6 months and Rob's solved it as a byproduct of some of his work, 3 years ago. Yeah. Anyway, and I was like, you know what, okay, I'll let Rob do what he does. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I vaguely remember that conversation. I can't for the life of me remember what the problem was now. Was it maybe something to do with the metaverse?
It was around the time of the metaverse.
Yeah, something like that.
It was something like that.
Yeah. I was probably going about how a concept of space is hardwired into humans' brains, and so spatial interfaces are deeply intuitive.
Could well have been.
And so everyone understands the metaphor of a door. They know what to do with that. So they don't have to learn an abstract interface. It was probably something like that.
Could well have been. Like I said, it was
straight into it.
It was like asking someone who's spoken another language in front of you to recall what was it about. I have no idea. All right. Well, we could go through your experiences. We know you've been doing this for 20 years, really. You finished high school sort of late 90s. So really you've been doing this.
Well, I didn't even finish, I dropped out of high school in 1996. And then I, been basically working ever since. I never went to uni and I never finished high school. I self-educated myself. So the year I dropped out of high school was actually glorious. Because the reason I dropped out of high school is I was frustrated with the schooling system, right? It wasn't because I didn't want to learn. It was because it was just way too boring. I was getting, memorize some geographic facts by rote. And I was like, I want to learn real stuff, right? So I just dropped out and taught myself all of the real stuff. And it turned out that, as with many things, it was around the rise of the web, right? This was just leading into the .com boom. And actually, when I dropped out of high school, tech was still kind of pretty uncool, right? You might not remember this, but in primary school, you get teased for knowing how to use a computer, right? You get called Four Eyes and Square and shit like that.
It wasn't cool. It was not.
It wasn't cool. But then the dot-com boom is the thing that first made it cool, because now you can make money with tech. And so suddenly, and it's kind of like, ever since then, it's become a lot cooler. But yeah, like I've just lost my train of thought thinking about the dot-com boom. Ask me again.
Forget it. I don't. I'm going to go off script anyway. I guess where I was trying to get to was that you've been doing this for 30 years. You've been at the frontier of new emerging technology for 30 years. I used an analogy yesterday, which is like any new frontier is a bit like the Wild West. You've got to be prepared to take risk. You've got to be prepared to go out there and delve into the unknown and solve problems as you go.
And that's a skill set in itself.
It's a skill set in itself.
Yeah. Your skill set isn't necessarily like, hey, I'm really good with building a ship. Your skill set is like, drop me in the middle of the ocean with some planks and some nails, and I'll probably figure out how to build a ship,
Correct.
That's just how that's how I live, right?
Yeah.
Do it in the middle of a storm. That's fine. We'll figure something out.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, if you're the kind of person who is like, oh yeah, I'll just stick with school because that's what everyone thinks of me to do, you're probably not the person who's like, you know what, just throw me in the ocean, let me work it out myself. Yeah. With a plank of wood and a couple of nails.
The frontier people are interesting though, right? Like they're interesting and the problems are interesting, and the unknown problem space, like, where exactly is this going? And I really enjoy that, right? And so, obviously I did a bunch of that before crypto, but the way my crypto journey started, and there aren't very many people who can say this in the world I know, is that, the day the Bitcoin white paper was dropped, I have a cypherpunk friend who I won't reveal his identity because he's a cypherpunk, but he is still a good friend of mine, and he sent me this white paper. And, I'm going to be real, right? I'd love to be like, oh my God, I got it straight away, and I was like, this is going to change the world. But I read this thing and I'm like, this is cool. Fucking crazy, but it's cool. And so off the back of that, I was like, okay, who's this Satoshi Nakamoto? This guy, and I searched for Satoshi Nakamoto, and this is nothing. I'm like, all right, so this is a pseudonym. Someone doesn't want us to know who's doing it. That's cool. That's interesting. And, long story short, me and this friend started running a Bitcoin node, about a day later, something like that. Was it actually maybe I got time dilation? Anyway, soon after that, because this was 2008, right? So I don't remember if there was any software that could be run yet, but my recollection is we did it pretty soon. There was something we were running.
It was early.
Anyway.
Yep.
And so, so there I was. So just by happenstance, we ended up running Bitcoin miners, right at the very beginning, and, it would just spit out Bitcoin every now and then. And it's just a shitty CPU miner. It's like, and so my crypto journey began then, but that wasn't my main focus for years. I was still building, what I call like traditional disruptive technology, somewhat jokingly. And I was very preoccupied with that. I was trying to build scale ups. I mean, that kind of like, I started Prismatic in 2013. That was a full body exercise. Went from a very difficult moment when I started it to having almost 40 staff and a high of like $1 million revenue a month within a few years. It was a 400% growth rate a year. It was just brutal. So that took all of my attention.
Of course.
And then Prismatic just kind of like, because our specialty was solve the hard problems that nobody else can solve, whatever they are. So you're going to come to us. Do you need to build a high performance team? Do you have like a rogue CTO and you need to figure out how to get the keys to the kingdom without him knowing? Do you need like a product built that no one's ever built before? Whatever the thing was, then that was the point. We'll solve that for you. And so like that kind of course, then helped me to kind of keep discovering all of these emerging tech edges. And so that's part of why, when people would come to me, I'd already be across it because, I noticed that, for example, like I'd usually be about 6 months before, as an investor, before a breakout, because I'd have like suddenly, four really early stage startups would come to me and start saying, hey, how do we build this thing? And I'd be like, okay, so then I have to figure it out and, what are the models and like, what's it going to look like? And so, I was just kind of like on it all the time. And so that, of course, brought more and more crypto to my plate.
Right.
Until now, where everything I'm doing is in crypto. And it's a much more mature industry and it's a lot more fun.
Yeah, we used the analogy before of the frontier. Eventually, the West gets settled, so to speak, you know what I mean? And late settlers can start moving in. Have you where do you think we are? I mean, you don't have to stick with that analogy, come up with whatever you'd like, but like, do you know what I mean? Like there's the people who've gone west with the wagons and there's no path, which is you leading the charge from the very first horse. But then, late settlers sort of come in, eventually sort of establishments pop up and all this kind of stuff, and you get, you get what you get. But where kind of are we, do you think, in that kind of journey? I mean, there's a lot of stuff. We had, for example, we had Tim Bass on last week from Red Belly Networks, which I know you're across the detail of that too. Yeah. And some of the stuff they're doing is, they're working now with like the RBA, for example, right? Yeah. I don't know if that counts as like late majority of settlers coming in, but do you know what I mean? Where that's very, very different from when you were just running a node on your CPU in 2000.
Oh my God, it's so different.
Right? The industry has gone that far this quickly, and here we are. So how would you categorize like where we are?
Look, we've had the equivalent of the .com boom. If you use the web as an analogy, we've had the equivalent of the .com boom already in that era as well, and truly over. So maybe that was the ICO boom, maybe not. It's not an exact analog. For me, it felt like crypto was moving a lot faster than the web in terms of how it was moving through the phases. But actually, I kind of feel like we're in that, like right now, we're in the era where the equivalent of the Googles, and Facebooks and so on are being born. Right. The giants of the web, right? Like that ended up being really big. I feel like that's the era we're in now. Like, I mean, obviously institutional adoption's happening. Obviously, crypto is now like accelerating rapidly towards essentially like incrementally replacing the traditional financial system rails. Like that's no longer like speculation. That's just now like we're watching that happen. And it's, I mean, and it doesn't matter which sector you're looking at, right? Like everyone's obviously like pretty much across like all of the DeFi stuff, but even in gaming, like, Ubisoft is building an on-chain game with Immutable, for example, right? Like these biggest names in gaming are starting to really kind of get involved in that as well. And I mean, I think even to the point where like crypto is now like probably front row seats in trade war stuff as well, like the whole East versus West stuff. So like, it's a very interesting time to be in crypto. The frontiers are still there, right? Like I'd say like, some stuff like L1s, L2s, core, things like Aave and so on are almost like, they've been around so much, they're almost like starting to be like a bit boring, if you know what I mean.
Definitely.
But the frontiers are still there and they're everywhere. And so, at the moment, I think frontiers are around things like ZKs, privacy, as a couple, like agentic commerce. So, things like X402, the payment protocol, that's very interesting. And I think there'll be a huge amount of economic gain flowing through that innovation. Gaming is approaching its disruptive breakout moment. It's a little bit hard to pick the timing, but it's definitely getting close. I can talk a little bit about that thesis too.
I would love to hear about that. Actually, if you had asked me what kind of the major theme for the next bull run to be, so if we go back to 2022, I would have said gaming was the number one theme, right? Yeah. But I feel like we're probably a little bit early on that.
I'll provide a more rather than a predictive answer, I'll just provide a thesis model for how to understand it. And then timing,
it'll be when it'll be,
yeah. But like, and actually, I look on the note of timing, I do want to say, like, I mean, I've been in crypto through every cycle, and I think it's useful to share a little bit about how I think about it, because like everyone's really obsessed with timing. Like the way I think about it is, you can assess. It's more of an investor mindset than a speculator's mindset, but you can assess the goodness of a thing, right? Like, is this a real opportunity? But it's a little bit hard to assess how is it going to roll out into the world and with what timing. And remembering that like markets are in the short term are a voting machine, not a weighing machine, but in the long term, they're a weighing machine. And especially in crypto, there's so much noise that just because something goes up in the short term doesn't mean that it's got any relationship to the fundamentals at all, as we know.
Yeah.
Right. But over time, of course, the things that actually do have substance win. It's just, look at Zcash as a really great example of that, right? Like completely disinterested in that, as a market, right? For so long. And now suddenly it's like doing really well, but they've just been doing something that actually has value and staying in the game. And eventually it comes around. Okay. So thesis for gaming, like I believe that fully on-chain games in particular, but crypto technology generally is disruptive of classic games. And by disruptive, I'm talking, about innovator's dilemma. So, like the pop science book on it, the innovator's dilemma talks about, for example, like SSD hard drives. So, like at first, a disruptive technology is worse in all of the ways that the market's buying. So SSDs were more expensive per megabyte. They were slower. They were smaller, etc. But then what happens is that the incumbents don't invest into it because they say, well, we can put $1 into our core technology, which in that case was platter-based hard drives, and we'll make $4. But if we put $1 into SSDs, we're going to make 10 cents. So why would we invest in it? But then what happens is they get better and better. And there's a point where the hockey stick crosses, at which point it's a bit too late to kind of catch up. And that's when it disrupts. So the question for me is like, with that framing, let's just gloss over the part that's disruptive, right? Like, let's say that I'm right, that fully on chains are disruptive of traditional games. What's the market buying, right? Like, at what point is it going to become better than a normal game and thus become disruptive? Well, my argument is simple for games. It's like when you can't tell the difference. If you can play a crypto game and you don't know it's a crypto game, it's disruptive, right? Because now it's just a game, but it's a game with extra advantages.
Yep.
And so I've been like looking at that. This is the reason I started building on Starknet a few years ago, because I looked at it and I thought, you know what, like optimistic rollups are great, Band-Aid, but what's really going to scale is ZKs, because a ZK is a lot more scalable. You can run compute locally and then prove it, right? You can take the entire Bitcoin blockchain and settle that into a single proof that can be used to verify that nothing's changed. So it's very efficient to scale, and you need efficiency for games.
Yep.
So that was part of why I got involved in Starknet, because that felt like the most credible ZK network that was going to get there first. And so far that feels like it's going pretty good. So, like if you look at the building blocks, they're all kind of there now, right? We have account abstraction wallets. You can just like sign in with a passkey or a password, or use your social media to create like an embedded wallet, and you don't even need to know it's crypto. We have like paymaster controls and that kind of stuff, right? Where you can just fund gas for users. And I think we've paid like about $300 in gas since May for our game on Starknet. It's cost us nothing. It's cheaper than the cloud.
Yeah, crazy.
And so on, right? And so then that's one layer, right? We've got these building blocks that are necessary to kind of abstract the experience of it being on chain, where you don't actually need to know you're using a wallet. You don't need to fund the wallet. You don't need to know anything about it. But then what we've also got is leaky abstractions. So every abstraction is leaky. And what happens is like when the abstraction breaks, things get complicated. So right now, that's one of the biggest problems with, say, crypto apps in general, is you can provide a polished experience, but when it breaks, it's confusing as hell to people that don't know what's going on. So someone like me, I'm like, oh yeah, like whatever, the transaction didn't settle in the mempool, and so it's not actually on chain yet, and that's what this means, and I know what to do. But imagine like, your grandma.
They just want a button mash and they just want it to work.
She's like, I did the thing, then it hasn't happened, or, it's disappeared, or, you have to kind of like have a good model for dealing with all of that. So we're not quite there yet, but we're really getting very close.
Yeah.
And I think, so it's no accident that we're approaching the breakout moment for games.
Yeah.
I think that's, when is it going to happen? I think it's happening right now.
Interesting.
And I think we probably see that flow into economic outcomes maybe sometime in the next 6 months, but it's a little hard to say.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. I think we have to maybe, I'm sure
Should I
people
dial it down a little bit?
No. I don't know how much people understand about zero knowledge proofs and all this kind of stuff, but it's safe to say if Rob says it's important, then it's important. Let's just run with that. But I guess just from a conceptual, like a higher level, like what are some of those advantages that you would, how would you explain to the person who's just like, to be honest, at the end of the day, I just want a good game. Like, how would you articulate to them going, well, look, there's this thing, you don't need to understand ZKs and all this kind of stuff, but you do need to know, here's the advantages that are coming your way.
Yeah, okay. So one thing is there's currently a big movement for unkillable games, right? Because like in traditional gaming, it's increasingly like a red market, right? So it's like, it's dog eat dog, it's like the players are having bad experiences, games, it's getting to maximum extraction. and so part of the problem with that, right, is that like you get a lot of games that players really love and then they get taken away from them and get screwed. Like recently Counter-Strike was like an example where they just totally destroyed the market for certain rare assets. That one's interesting because that's like a little bit more in our terrain where it's like market versus game quality versus some other things. It's like maybe that was good for the game but bad for the market. But more often what happens is game developers go, well, we can't really make any more money out of this. We're going to change the economics in a way that ruins it for the player, or we're just going to shut the thing down entirely.
Right.
And so one of the benefits of fully on-chain games is like, I guess to put it really simply, people still use Uniswap v2, right? Because they can, because it's there forever. Like Roman Storm is, is in court, but Tornado Cash still works and nobody can shut it down, right? So crypto has this coercion resistance property that is really valuable, that can be applied to games and applications to say, hey, this is actually still going to be here. So if you think about it, that's a protocol business. So like an example of a protocol is, maybe this is not this, maybe I'm just jumping around with concepts, but like
this is easy to follow.
So HTTP is a protocol, right? Anyone can build, that's for the web. Anyone can build a website that adheres to HTTP. You could be literally like, number one on the FBI's most wanted. You can build a website using HTTP. Nobody can stop you doing that. And we're not like, oh my God, we need to be able to censor people from using HTTP. It's obvious that it's a protocol. It's just a standard way for computers to talk to each other and do some things. And that if you build adhering to that standard, that your stuff will work with everything else. Great. So we can do that with crypto as well, though, right? And we can put these things there, and they're just going to keep being there.
Yep.
Now, that just because we can do that doesn't mean we do that. And just because we do that doesn't mean it becomes what we were calling autonomous worlds, or like a self-sustaining thing. Like people still really haven't been able to make a genuine DAO or anything that can kind of just like exist in its own life per se. But we've got small examples of that. So the technology is really good for that kind of thing. One, two, it's very the technology buzzword is composable. But essentially, like you can build up these Lego bricks that can be reused in a bunch of novel ways with low friction. So somebody can come along and go, oh yeah, I think I can use that Lego brick, and they can just plug it in and use it. And so suddenly you start to get this acceleration of what's possible.
Gotcha.
A third thing is like, okay, you've got this really like transparent source of truth. So if we publish a traditional game, we have a server, or a traditional application, a finance app, we have a server, we have a trusted middleman. So what tends to happen is you get walled gardens, where your data gets locked away on a server behind the walled garden. You stop paying a subscription, it gets taken away. So that's essentially coercive, right? That's like saying, we're going to do this harm to you if you don't give us money. And so, it's kind of, I guess, like to put it a little bit like provocatively, but like you can charge a price premium because you've got lock-in, which is essentially a big part of the business model of a lot of walled gardens.
Lock-in/lock-out, you can...
and that's also why the classic VC kind of scale up playbook is like, take over the whole industry, because, essentially remove the competition, and then you get even more, more network effects from the lock-ins, and like the attempts of, Airbnbs and Ubers and these kinds of models is to some degree to lock in the market. And so you have this property with like a crypto app that you can publish the entire essentially server publicly. It's open source in a lot of cases. Everyone can see how it works. It's public. And then that means anyone can make their own client to talk to that in theory. So if I'm using any crypto app like that and I don't like the interface I'm using, I can just make my own. Doesn't mean everyone's going to do it, but I can. So that's a really interesting property for games, right? Because now that means that they're moddable. They're really moddable. Like, it happens all the time. Like Loot Survivor is a game on Starknet that's done really well. It was doing about half of all Starknet transactions for about 2 weeks running recently. And, like as soon as they launched that, somebody launched a modified client that gives you some more insight into what's about to happen and what your odds are. And like, so immediately you can just start mixing and matching. But then it's also composable between games. So you can say, I'm gonna use their stuff to integrate that into my game and start to get these like novel mashups. Like we just were in a hackathon and we made a mashup using one of the assets that were in their game, which we can do because they've done a good job of designing it. So that's like some of the stuff that you can't really do with traditional games.
Because it's the data's hidden and the access to it, the ability to change it, to modify it and take it and create something new with it is
it's
locked
like
away.
this open playpen where everyone can kind of like play with it. And maybe the biggest feature is the ability to build the economics straight into the game in a sustainable way. And so those experiments are still ongoing, but that's also really cool because like suddenly you have microtransactions and they're viable, right? Suddenly it's all based on a protocol. Because it's a protocol, you can have faith. I know I can build on HTTP. I know that if I build up a bunch of investment into this game, that part's all still going to be there, and we're going to have a relationship.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a much bigger idea than I think people were expecting. I guess for a lot of people, they might say, "Hey, look, does the game experience make a difference for me or not?" But I guess what you're talking about is actually much bigger than that.
Yeah,
much bigger than that. The fact is, because building on a blockchain will allow exponentially increase the rate of development and experimentation and improvement of the overall experience, right?
Because it's emerging tech, right? It's been much harder and much slower to build, the same level of games so far, but it's getting, as the kind of building blocks get in place, that's getting faster and faster. So it went from like, good luck building any kind of a blockchain game in less than 6 months because you got to you got to write your own indexer. You got to do all this really complex stuff to, hey, someone's done that for you. There's this bit, there's that bit. Actually, in the game jam, I think something like 40 people made a game in 2 days. It's fully on chain, right? So like, it's really getting a lot easier.
Yeah.
But once you've gotten it out there and you've done this, like you've got to do the hard design work at the moment, and that's still an emerging tech space. But once you get it out there, then it starts to have these properties and we start to see this acceleration. And so I'd say like gaming is sort of like a frontier where the things that are going to be, the technology that we're going to see flowing out through the rest of the crypto ecosystem is often going to be happening, somewhere like gaming first. Gaming is like an R&D center. And that's part of my interest in it. And I think that's true of both the technology and it's also true of the other side, which is like, coordination and all the meta crisis and so on. It's like these are novel mechanisms for how do you coordinate people at scale and align incentives, right? Except that, and this is why I started working on games instead of directly on the meta crisis. It's like, okay, in the real world, it's really messy. If I say to you, hey, we want to run an experiment, like we're going to have a novel kind of organization and everything's going to be unfamiliar and there's real money on the line and your livelihood's on the line. So, instead of doing anything that you're familiar with, you've got to do this completely wild and radical stuff. We don't know if it's going to work. Are you on board with that? And of course, you're going to be like, why don't we just do it in the way that we know works?
Correct.
Right?
This is crazy. And I love this idea. It's huge and it's really powerful. It's almost like creating it's like this living brain where like new connections are being formed daily, right? And new memories are being stored forever, permanently, immutably on a blockchain. It reminds me a lot, and I've told this story before, the Aaron Schwartz story. Have you heard this? I'm sure. Are you familiar with this?
Yeah, like jog my memory though.
He was the guy. He's this young kid. He's probably not too dissimilar to yourself in that he was this sort of. He was this young guy, and he thought, well, you know what? I think he kind of was like 14, and they kind of went, go straight to uni because high school is not. It's not worth your time. Just go straight to uni. And do some research. And he was a tech guy. But one of the things this is probably late 90s. Unfortunately, he's not alive anymore, but I guess he would probably be a similar-ish age, maybe a little bit younger. But basically what his big thing was, he went to JSTOR, right? He looked at JSTOR and he's like, hang on, JSTOR is like this published history of all human knowledge, right? And the only way you could get access to it was through going to uni. And you kind of like, what?
He did like some hacking.
He's like, what, this is bullshit. This is bullshit because like this should be humanity's knowledge, right? So he basically was like, well, I can download as much as I want. You can't, but what I can do is create a mirror website where he then was like, well, I'll download it. So he downloaded everything and then republished on this mirror website. So effectively everyone could have access to this information. And he was like, I'm allowed to download it. You didn't say I couldn't download all of it. So he just kind of did it and he built this script and kind of ran all down. Anyway.
I remember he got in a lot of trouble.
He got in a lot of trouble and the FBI got involved and he was just effectively a young kid just with big dreams, right? And he got absolutely crushed by, I guess, the FBI and they wanted to send him to jail like forever. Or they wanted him to admit like guilt so that he wouldn't do it again. And he's kind of like, well, I didn't do anything wrong. And he kind of fought it. And it's a really sad story in the fact that the pressure ended up getting to him. He ended up committing suicide. But
I remember that. Yeah.
What was the thing was, and he was effectively persecuted, but his idea was really powerful. It's very similar here. There was a lot of people who got access to that research and went on and did really, really cool stuff with that research because they had access to all this in the same way, right? And so all this information, it's better for humanity if we can share all this stuff publicly. And this is probably the real powerful idea. We've got like a digital version of what Aaron Schwartz is doing with JSTOR.
I've even heard somewhat credible arguments from meta-crisis thinkers that, that argue that that the same actually probably should be true of states. It's that if states are really like public and transparent, it would quite likely reduce conflict and not increase it. And that's like a terrifyingly alien idea. But maybe there's some merit in that. What we definitely know is that the more that we share knowledge and put it out there, the more that humanity builds in it. Like look at what happened with like electric vehicles. Like Musk literally used that as a strategy by open sourcing a bunch of the technology to do that, thus helping to bring the industry that would allow him to succeed into existence, which at the time maybe looked like a crazy move to a bunch of people. It's like, why are you giving away all of the things that give you an edge? Well, because now we've got network effects, right? And it's a smaller piece of a bigger pie. And I think that's just often true with research and knowledge sharing as well. Yeah,
totally. And there's another really simple example. I know you know Jiva from Helix.
I love
the
Jiva.
Guys. Right,
Jiva's my homie.
And he was telling I've heard this example before, but he was like living proof because he sort of showed how it worked. But like for example, when he was raising money to do various protocols, I know he's got his fingers in a bunch of pies.
He really does.
He kind of just went out and was just kind of went to the internet. And people all around the world could kind of just fund him in crypto. Yeah. He wasn't subject to like the constraint on like the gatekeepers for capital in Australia. Yeah. So he was able to raise all this capital globally, and there wasn't like a bank in between doing FX. There was just a bunch of people on the internet sharing ideas, communicating, sharing capital.
Hugely reduces friction. Yeah.
Hugely reduces friction. And when he goes off, he's done heaps of cool shit, right?
He really has.
And the example is, I remember first here before I saw it in practice with Jiva, hopefully watching Jiva. Yeah, well, we'll make sure we do a cut and be Jiva.
I'll send it to you, Jiva.
He, for example, like if you wanted to create a new platform, a new technology, there's probably some smart kid in, I don't know, Japan somewhere, right, sitting in his mum's basement building some cool stuff, and he could deploy with like a bunch of capital he's raised from just random people on the internet he's met, get it out the door in a couple of months, and it could end up being this $1 billion idea. Versus that same project, that same idea, you go to like a large institution, they put 40 people on it, they spend $100 million doing it. It goes through endless levels of committee and never sees the light of day. But do you know what I mean? Like
there's actually I used to do a lot of innovation work with corporations, and I was notorious for predicting that they were going to fail and being right when everyone else thought that they were going to succeed at a thing. And actually they had a really simple lens that I thought was found almost bulletproof, right? And so there was a computer scientist in the 70s, I think it was Conway's law. And paraphrasing Conway's law, to extrapolating a little bit, so this is not exactly what he said, but the output of any organization is a function of the communication and the cultural structure, right? And so, in other words, based on the structure of the organization, you can predict what the result's going to be. That's my extrapolation. And so a corporation is not set up to do innovation. And so the only time innovation happens in a corporation is when they create a bubble between the structure of the corporation and the actual attempt.
Interesting.
And so when they haven't done that, you can kind of predict it's really going to fail because that's not the output you're going to get from that environment. And sometimes that's done by accident, like, Red Garage was Coke Incubator, and they put that outside of the structure so far that it actually then went on and built Hivery, for example, which was like really, really, really clever analytics product. And so that's an example of corporate innovation, right? But that was because they had enough of a buffer between the structure and not. And I think that's just very predictive in general, right? So, if you want innovation, you need to be able to move fast. You need to be able to experiment. You usually need like a small, really good team. Like, the more experienced, the better. With a very low collaboration cost. So like the sweet spot is like 4 people, maybe with somebody in support or less. 3 to 4 people, you've got about the right, you've got like different expertise and perspectives at the table. You've got enough hands, but it's still very efficient to communicate.
Not too many chefs in the kitchen.
Exactly. That's like the gold standard.
Right.
Has been since the 70s, still is.
Incredible. Yeah, that's fascinating.
Although that's changing with AI now. It's kind of the numbers going down because you can have one less people who can do more. So that's interesting to see how that's going to unfold. Where's
your interest with AI at the moment?
It's a fascinating, game-changing paradigmic technology. There's so much happening. It's moving really fast. It's going to disrupt a lot. I mean, like, I think one of the AI projects I'm most interested in, am I allowed to like call out specific?
Go.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We'll make sure
I own a bunch of this, so I'm shilling my bags here, but like, it's Daydreams Protocol, which is run by, he's known as Loaf, who's another Sydney founder, very, very cool guy. And so Daydreams is essentially like the scaffolding for autonomous agents. It's like, other than base, it's like the highest grossing X402 protocol, which is currently in meta. Like, everyone's excited about X402, but he was early to the party and is doing really cool shit. And so he's basically obsessed with basically making it possible for agents to be able to autonomously operate. So at the moment, the thing that's happening is a bunch of people are building essentially agentic endpoints that can then pay each other. Right. So they can, you can have an agent that's running and it can just use X402 to go, okay, I want this data. Oh, look, there's another agent that has that. I'm going to pay that agent 3 cents, get the thing that I need, and go. And so that's really cool, right? There's like this huge acceleration. Some people might refer to the dead internet theory, right, where it just ends up being all bots. But I think we're going to see a degree of that, right? But I think that what we need to do is build the human web on top of that. Increasingly, you're going to have this, like, automated substrate.
Robots running around doing all the real hard work.
And so most people's experience, like when you say AI, most people think, the ChatGPT UI, right? Which is, certainly increasingly capable and quite useful, but there's so much more going on in AI. So, obviously it's another paradigmic technology, like crypto was, like the web, like social, like mobile, and it's going to continue to create interesting emerging tech opportunities for people like me.
Yeah, interesting.
It's also going to change the world a lot. So,
looking at your crystal ball, what's some of your theories of how things will look different in, say, 10 years time due to specifically AI, for example, and the crossover maybe between crypto, just to keep it?
Well, I think the biggest thing that I hope for, and it looks like it's happening, is that we have a move towards self-sovereign on-device AI. It looked for a while there like that was not as likely as very big centralized platform AI. But here's the essential problem: is cognitive security, right? So essentially, like, a lot of what AI is obviously a broad field. When we say AI, a lot of the time we're talking about like LLM style AI, like, this kind of like automation of human reasoning and language style AI. And it turns out that's more useful than any of us thought a little while back. And so for the first time in human history, we have the ability to automate the production of human reasoning. It's not necessarily to create new thought, but we can create new thought by synthesizing things that we missed amongst the existing knowledge base, which is like, so if you look at there have been some scientific breakthroughs, like in maths and so on, that have been identified by AI, but probably that's just like, actually, we'd already figured that stuff out. No one had just put it all together. And the AI is good at synthesizing that.
That's really interesting. So kind of like you worked out this, you've worked out that, you realize there's kind of something in the middle that you needed, but you haven't articulated in between. So
to my knowledge, at least at the moment, I don't think that we have AI that's like genuinely figuring things out that aren't already known to some degree. And maybe one day we will. But what we do have is the ability to automate human reasoning, and things that only a human could do before can now be done by a machine, right? TLDR. So then we're going to get a little bit philosophical for a second, but like, okay, so there's a famous book called Thinking Fast and Slow.
Dan Kahneman.
Yeah. Dan Kaufman. Anyway, so something like that. And I think maybe you're right. Anyway, so he talks about, we've got two kinds of human thinking: system one, system two thinking. Yep. One of them's intuitive, effortless, automatic. We do it all the time. That's designed to whatever, see a bit of orange between the trees and think maybe there's a tiger and get you to react fast. Yep. And then system two thinking, which is deeply effortful thinking. It's hard, it's analytical. And, he makes a point early in his book that, we often don't know which one we're using. So in the book, he gives an example, like I asked the question, should I invest in Ford stock? Is it a good is it undervalued is really the only genuine question. But I don't know the answer to that. But I went to the Ford showroom recently and I liked the cars. So my brain swaps out the question with one I do know the answer to, which is, do I like Ford? And the answer is yes. So your experience is, should I invest in Ford? I've thought about this. I think the answer is yes. What really happened is you just made some shit up in your brain to save energy. And so the saving energy part is really key here, right? Which is that our brains are designed to be energy efficient. And so you can think of humans developed language. Language allows us to share ideas. That means that we can say like, hey, don't eat that red berry. It's going to kill you. But that one over there is all right. So now I don't have to learn that. I got that knowledge from you, right? And that was efficient. That was essentially a distributed algorithm, right? Bear with me. So, so humans use a sort of distributed cognition to figure stuff out. We take ideas from other people. So in computer terms, that's a little bit like saying that we run, other people give us software and we run that without a sandbox in our brain, right? So if that's a virus, we can't stop that from running in our brain.
Gotcha.
Right? So that's like a part of the design of human cognition, where that's part of our strength. And so that's leveraged a lot, for example, social media and so on is hijacking it. And so that's where attention comes in. So if you have a values misalignment with something, what are you going to do? Usually you're going to not want to pay as much attention to it. Why? Well, because attention's like the firewall. So what you don't pay attention to doesn't run in your brain. So we remove our attention from things that might be harmful to us. It's one of our defense mechanisms. Okay, so now we have AI, the ability to produce reasoning. So one of the things AI can do is it can take any payload, any idea, like let's say it's a bad idea that's directly going to be harmful to you, and it can reframe it in a way that's much more likely to be acceptable to you and get that into your brain anyway. And social media is designed to hijack your attention. So it's designed to remove the firewall so that, more payload can be loaded into you. And then that's happening at scale. So what's going to happen with AI, right, is that it can do all of that stuff. So who controls the AI, right? What are we really talking about when we say alignment is like, like now that AI is not yours, actually that's controlled by a corporation, and that corporation now has a direct line into changing your perception of the world. Like, is that really what we want? I don't want that.
100%.
Right? I want self-sovereign AI that runs on my device that I know is for me. That can keep me safe from all of this, right? And so it's really good because that's the direction it's going. It looks like things like ZKs and local device, being able to run device locally means like we probably are actually going to be able to have very, very, very capable AIs that can run locally for us, and it's going in the direction. So I'm really excited about that for the rather esoteric reasons that I just explained.
That's mind blowing. That's mind blowing because we know we see it. We see it in real life. I mean, the algorithm has hijacked it. It feeds back to you stuff that you want because it's it knows that your brain's going to like firewall things it doesn't want to see. It's going to want to kind of see things it does see. And we see this,
unless it makes you angry enough that then you want to engage with it more. But that's anyway. But that's
it's so incredible. Like so, we know this. So if you're like in the US, it's probably an example. You have the Blues and the Reds or whatever, and the Reds never see anything.
False dichotomy, right?
It's a false dichotomy, and the Blues only see what they ever see, and they never see the other side. And of course, they're just like more and more, they just more and more less likely to see each other's views. So you made the comment about self-sovereign AI. So I'm curious, like, okay, so how do we know, like, what moral code is the AI living by that we go, this is actual middle, this is fair, this is like, do you know what I mean?
Or is that even possible? Right?
Or is that even possible? Yes.
Well, look, humans aren't homogenous, right? And that's a feature, not a bug. Like, you to kind of use a really simplified metaphor, back whatever, when we were tribesmen living on a plain or something, well, it's a good thing if you have, somebody who tends to wake up early in the morning. It's also a good thing if you tend to have somebody that's like a night owl. Why? Because, a predator walks into the camp, there's always going to be someone awake, right? So you don't want everyone to be doing exactly the same thing. And I think values are a little bit like that as well. Like, a lot of people hate people that who have adequately different values from them. But my argument is that, like, actually we want a really broad array of values in the world. And, mostly what you want to do is maybe just spread it out a little bit. So the people that don't, maybe have like a reason to have conflict, like they just fundamentally disagree on some things that don't fit together. Well, if you put them right next to each other, they're probably going to fight each other. But actually, you know what? Like, just a gradient, right? So like you're kind of next to people that you
Yeah.
like agree with, and then them, and then them, and then them, and you get like 6 or 7 degrees over there, and you probably hate those people, but you just don't need to be next to them, and that's probably good. And then more efficient, this is what the meta crisis is about. Essentially, better systems for coordination that produce more of a positive sum outcome for humanity.
Yeah.
And so I think like sovereign AI is an example of that. My meta crisis thesis was more or less what we want is more organic governance that brings the decisions and the closer to the people that affects them, and introduces a lot more complexity and a lot less lock-in.
Yeah.
So then now it's like, okay, if you have walled gardens, you've got 2 walled gardens. Oh, no, actually, let's use a simple metaphor. I'll make it less. So imagine that you're like in a startup, right? And you're one of the founding employees. You're not the founder. You've got maybe some sweat equity options. If you screw off, maybe you're going to lose those, right? And so what you do, you all get in there, you're doing a bunch of work, and maybe you're contributing, something really important, some novel work that's never been done before. This startup's going to use to really succeed. Okay, and that's great. You're in there 2 years and you're working, 7 days a week. I mean, I've done this, right? I think I've worked like 7 days a week, like 16 to 18 hours a day for like 2 years. Story for another time. But it's like, I once didn't leave my desk for 5. Me and my co-founder, Jed Watson, this is a call out to you. We once declared we weren't going to leave our desks until we shipped a product. It took us 5 days. People just brought us food, and we slept at the desk. It was, but we did it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress. Okay, wait. Bring it back. What was I talking about? Oh,
Yeah, go.
So-
I've got to bring you in. Maybe I'll bring this in just because it's
Sure.
actually fairly similar. You've probably heard there's a philosopher, Alan Watt. You know Alan?
Alan Watts, did you
Alan
know?
Watts, yep.
Oh yeah, Alan Watts is amazing.
Yeah, and he was talking about this. So the point that you're making before about we need diversity. Diversity is a feature, not a bug.
Yeah.
And someone asked him, and when was he sort of most active? 70s, 80s, around that time?
Yeah, I think
We're talking
yeah.
this nearly
Yeah.
50 years ago, I guess, in some cases.
He was very far ahead of the game.
Yeah, super far ahead of the game. And I remember him talking about, someone asked him about this back in the 70s or whenever it was, someone asked him about the idea of, being able to select your genetics. And this is kind of futuristic topic. So, well, what's your argument against basically having, if we can modify genetics and we can just pick whoever we want, like what's your argument against having that? And his argument was very similar to yours. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this. He kind of said, well, look, my biggest argument against that is that like if you're like an athletic family, you'll probably want athletic kids. Or if you're an academic family, you're going to value academic kids and you're going to do all this thing. But he goes, what we need is we need the guy who's interested in bacteria because penicillin, right? Or we need the guy who's fundamentally obsessed with like frogs because you just don't know.
Exactly.
That person's the one who's going to work out the thing that kind of matches with the other thing, and then it builds right. But that was effectively, we're talking about that same thing here with the balance of ideas.
Yeah, we don't want to overfit selection, basically, right? Because humanity's greatest strength is in fact our diversity, and that's why all of these things, these false dichotomies like left versus right, men versus women, these are divisive and bad for humanity as a whole, right? These are not clean narratives. These are narratives that produce power for somebody that's not the people who are participating. It's not in our interests to be against each other in this way, but we are, a lot of us. And so I really think like, that algorithms, networks, AI, blockchain-like technology, these are the key technologies that are going to influence what the world looks like around these things, right? And what I personally would like to see is a greater degree of humane foundations in technology for us. So basic degrees of privacy, which should be a human right. It's good for all of us to have some of that. I'd like us to have a basic degree of coercion resistance, right? So at the moment, we're in a world which is trending very hard towards, like, for example, mandatory digital ID and social credit systems. And, you didn't, now your whatever access to the banking system can be taken away because you didn't put your trash out, that kind of stuff. That's not a humane world to live in. Yeah. And so like what I really hope that we accomplish is to introduce a basic degree of coercion resistance into the digital technology that we use before it's too late. So what that really does is it just makes certain things too expensive to enforce. So the internet was a good example of that. you went from being able to take someone's money by taking their physical asset, like whatever, you'd have a strike on the factory floor and you could stop a business from making money to, or you could come and take someone's wealth, to that being in a computer and really easy to spirit away, so much harder to take. So it's not like you can't take it, it just makes it more expensive. We need that on basic human autonomy, so that there's a basic level of human autonomy that's too expensive to take away, basic level of privacy that's too expensive to take away. We want, we want there to be a basic degree of, access to things like AI that is in the interest of the person who's using it, rather than the interest of a business or a platform or a government. And so if we can get that right, and that's part of why I'm interested in games as well, right? Because that's like the stomping ground where they're kind of like, exactly.
Yeah.
And, we were talking about it earlier, but I was going to make a point about that I think is really important, right? Which is that when it's real world consequences, suddenly people get really conservative and they want to go with what they know, of course, right? Like, it's your livelihood. So, then we use the things we're familiar with. But when it's a game is just play. A game is like, okay, look, we're going to play it, go on an adventure. We're going to play a scenario. So now we have control over the narratives, the incentives. And in the end, it's just a game. We play it, we're done. So people are much more willing to be experimental, but it's the same problem space, right? Like positive sum coordination, game theory, this is all connected. So like, this is part of why I'm interested in all of this, because I think we're running out of time to put some foundations in place that will preserve human dignity, and preserve this, fight against this instinct towards homogenous, everyone has to be the same, everyone's kind of like unified. That's, I think, going to be really a very bad thing for humanity if it becomes the norm. And so I really do believe that these technologies actually have the ability, they create problems, but then they solve them. And we need to actually go in that direction. And that's a big part of the reason why I care about these set of technologies.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating. So how do you get these protections? How do you insure against this? And I guess is the solution to have a sufficiently decentralized decision-making protocol? Enough people out there, you know what I mean? As soon as you centralize it and one or two people get to make a decision, the balance of that decision becomes very focused on whatever that small group want. So you kind of almost need, the more people make decisions, the more likely it is that people will vote for basic human protections, because in everyone's interest, I'm guessing, if I follow that through.
Yeah, well, I think as a metaphor, right? Like, if you have, let's say not that long ago, there was no worldwide communication network, and if you wanted to get a message from somebody in from London to the Americas or whatever, you had to probably put them on a ship, and wait a really long time. And so human organizational structures were designed for that, right? The corporation and the modern government was designed in that era. So it's actually designed to be able to unite people in a common cause and then give them actually quite a lot of autonomy to execute on the ground. But now we're in a world where you and I can coordinate like that whenever we want, wherever we are in the world all the time. And, we have like a bunch of automation technology. The world has changed substantially, and we need our organization structures to change as well. And so as a metaphor, right, like if you take 10 million people and you say, okay, we've got this one rule that applies to all 10 million people, then there's going to be winners and losers. And now there's going to be a fight over what the rule is, because the people who lose are going to want it to be changed in their advantage. And so, but do you really need to fight over it? Because maybe what you can do is you can say, what if we just broke that million people down into the number of groups that can all agree adequately about what the rules are? Maybe you get like 17 different rules, but then they can that's the rule that applies to them in that area. And a lot of the time that's going to work. Not always, but you can get this much more complex, real-time, dynamic negotiation that brings the consequences and the decisions much closer to the people that they affect, and empowers them more to do things. Like a good example of that is like a strata, right? Like it's if I own an apartment in a building, it's like great, like I should get a say in the things that directly affect me. That's a good example of it, right? I mean, everyone hates strata, but it's also nice that you get a say, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Man, we've covered some big concepts. I'm not sure which one is the biggest so far, but I love them. And this is fascinating. And you know what I take away from what you just said? One of the biggest things is like, the rule of institutions is, maybe they've as you said, they were built a couple hundred years ago and they served a purpose, and it's almost like they're a bit outdated now. it's almost like a lot of these big institutions now are fighting almost for relevancy.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, we've got these technologies and these new ways that we kind of don't even need. Well, I can't say we don't need them anymore. There's still probably a role in the current day society, but the tendency with the technology is to disintermediate, I guess, a lot of those large institutions.
People like to throw the baby out with the bathwater as well. I mean, we don't want either maximal centralization or maximal decentralization. It is a balance. In DAOs, there was this whole it has to be, this is not decentralized, or this is not blah, blah, blah. It's like, you just get cascade consensus failure if literally there's full decentralization, nobody can agree on anything, nothing happens. And at the other end of the spectrum, you've got full centralization. Actually, it's really good to have a working group or a small group of people who are delegated responsibility and can just figure it out. There's a bunch of trade-offs to be made, and that's a good thing. So, it's definitely a very interesting exploration, but we need it because the world has become very complex, very real time, very dynamic, and our ways of coordinating are struggling to keep up and catch up. And I think I know we're probably running over time. So
no, we're not. We've got as much time as you need, Rob.
Dangerous to say to me. So, I think one of my lenses on corporate structures, right, is that one of the big benefits of a corporation was economies of scale, right? And so, essentially you get this increasingly efficient ability to use resources at scale, and that makes that means you can outcompete. That's why we've had this aggregation of power in industries where you just end up getting a few really, really big players eventually. But that also, the other thing that happens is communication slows down, right? They become slower. And actually it turns out that increasingly that's a really big disadvantage. So now you have this equalizing force. The economy of scale is still very much a real effect, but then you also have these increasingly disadvantageous decisions that get made because they're made too late, too slow, you can't keep up. And so that's starting to favor more, agile, adaptive, organic governance structures. And at the same time, AI is coming in. AI can help us to navigate all of that complexity more efficiently. But then we need the provability part, which is where the crypto technologies come in.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's just, how could you possibly, as a human, deal with all of that complexity, right? You need systems for trust. You need systems to make sense of it. And so we're only really just barely beginning to scratch the surface. And that's understandable, because another one of my lenses from innovation is that the world changes straight away, usually. Right? We think, this thing's changing the world, it's taking 10 years. No, the world changes straight away. Humans change slowly. We adapt to things slowly. So it takes 10 years for everyone to get used to the new thing and figure out how to use it. But actually it happens really very fast. And the rest is people playing catch up. And so that's where people like me end up with an edge in emerging technology, because the world changes. I see the change, I extrapolate, I understand where it's going, maybe 5-10 years before a lot of other people. And then I'm frustrated, I'm waiting for the thing to happen. I'm it's going to happen. I know it's going to happen. I've seen it. It's all the ocean beds have been moved.
You've seen
the water is flowing from here to there. I can't tell you exactly when all the water is going to be, moved, but I know it's going to keep going that way, because
you've seen the lightning, the thunder's coming, but there's a delay.
Yeah. How long exactly? You don't know yet, but you know it's coming.
Yeah, correct. Man. All right. Well, where do we go now? Jeez, we've unpacked some big ideas. I'm not sure if I'm fully equipped to even answer the right questions, but it's fascinating.
It's the Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times.
There we go. That can be our next one.
We live in interesting times.
We do live in interesting
and
times.
And it's a good and a bad thing.
I've never seen, I am fascinated by, I have not been in this space as long as you have. The great thing about, and I always say this, the best thing about working at a place like, Independent Reserve and having is that we get to see the broad spectrum of activity that's happening, and the people who are participating and the new players who are coming on board. We kind of see it all, right? And we get a nice little view of everything that's happening across the space, from the guys like yourself who are leading the charge on the frontier to, mum and dad investors who are going, I'm going to have a double with this thing on the side, right? Yeah. All this kind of stuff. And the rate of change is, even in the last, has been mind-blowing. I find it really difficult to often, I've got a lot of friends who will come to me and be like, oh, Lee, can you explain this thing to me? I'm trying to get my head around it. Where do I start? I'm like, mate, I don't know how you fill a well with a teaspoon, but it's,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like you
Look, even for me, it's too much to keep up with all of it. I mean, because I am across a lot, people come to me and kind of expect me to be across, honestly, a dizzying array of different things.
it is incredible.
And sometimes you just got to say, oh, look, I'm not across that. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely in my old age too. I'm in my mid 40s now. I've been doing this for, what is it like? I've been doing this for basically 30 years almost. And, and there's definitely stuff where I'm just like, I don't want to figure out how that has all changed a million times again. Like I'm kind of like, I'm just going to have a superficial understanding of that now. There's just so much happening and it's accelerating. So it is hard to stay across everything. But I like the, I was in D-Web camp a couple of years ago, which is it's like a conference in the Californian redwoods where the old guard of the internet get together and wander around and, camping in bare feet, talking about stuff. People like Sir Tim Berners-Lee and, like the internet archive crowd and these types, right? And then you also get some crypto people, you get a bit of everything. And the last D-Web I was at, they were talking about JOMO, the joy of missing out. And I loved this. I was like, this is amazing. This is like, absolutely. So now the last couple of years I've been doing a lot of JOMO. I've been really kind of quite focused actually.
On the JOMO.
Yeah. So we mentioned Prismatic, right? But I'm not actively taking on clients in Prismatic for a couple of years now. I've kind of like left it there because I still get a bunch of people asking me to help. And in theory, maybe I'll say yes to one of them at one point. But I just been down rabbit holes, down the meta crisis, fully on-chain games, distributed infrastructure, really kind of very specific things that I'm interested in. And the game I'm making, Pistols at Dawn, is like, that was just because I was like, I want to do something that's fun.
Well, it's going to be my next sort of question. For you, you've done so much.
It wasn't meant to be serious.
Like what's the fun stuff? I remember hearing as an old colleague was telling me about this business, and these guys, probably not too dissimilar to self. They've done sort of everything. They've looked at everything, and their office was no longer desks. It was no longer computers. It was just, they had just set their office up as like some big comfy couches, and all they would do would be sit around and think about the stuff they wanted to do. Right. And so they were like, these guys are investors, right? And so they would sit around.
Yeah, that makes sense then. Yeah.
They just spent the whole day, they got to work, they would have their coffee or their beers or whatever it is that they had. They'd sit on their couches and go, all right, let's just think about stuff that we're interested in. Yeah. Let's go do stuff we're interested in. But we need sort of a space, literally a space just to kind of think.
Yeah. For me, that's the dungeon. I should have you over there sometime.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, please. I'd love to come to the dungeon. You heard that. Right. I'm sure the dungeon is a fantastic place.
I'm sure people will hear from you again.
But this kind of feels like where, I don't know, forgive me for making assumptions, but it kind of feels like this is the kind of the spot you're in right now. The dungeon, the thinking, the man cave, whatever we want to call it, right? Yeah. Is this the kind of space you're in now where you're thinking, I just want to do stuff that I'm personally interested in?
It definitely started there. Like, I think probably around when COVID landed, it got a lot more quiet, which is really good for me. I had the business was in a really good state. Prismatic at the time, we had like a bunch of revenue that I didn't really need to do that much for. So I kind of got almost like a couple of years there from about 2021 to 2023 where I actually had a bunch of space to think. So I did that, and that was great. And I started asking myself pesky questions like, what would be meaningful to me, and what contribution do I think I could make that would be uniquely valuable, and what do I want to do with my life? And that's what led me to the meta crisis. Because I thought, I can see the direction the world's going here, and it's going to get increasingly oppressive. And I think it would be really good for us to get ahead of that and try and make a dent in that. But then I personally wasn't enjoying the work that I was doing in the meta crisis. I went really hard down that rabbit hole, but I was like, this is not really the thing that I want to do. I need to balance it. And then so I started making games because that was really fun and that was interesting and it was playful, and I really enjoy that. And then as with all things, there's this trap with people like me. You end up overcomplicating and trying to build a business out of it, but it's like a lifestyle business. I'm not, like people are like, Rob, your background, why haven't you raised, a bunch of money into this gaming company? And, why aren't you trying to scale it up or do this stuff? I'm like, because I want to live my life, spend time with my kids, do interesting stuff and also make games. So I just put a bunch of money into making this game, which, over the last 2 years before the tech was ready. And, so really what we did is we just remade the same games about 15 times, as things kind of got up to speed.
Yeah.
But that was fun. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And, but I always feel a little bit embarrassed, almost like people are going to come look at this game, this thing that we've been working on it for 2 years, and they're going to be like, is this all you've made in 2 years? Like,
this is Pistols at Dawn.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I don't know about Pistols at Dawn because obviously you're still working on it. But, all right, let's go. Pistols at Dawn. Give us the high level.
Look, it started as a joke. I want you to just all understand how unserious this whole thing was.
Pistols at Dawn is serious business. There's been a glove slap. Someone has demanded satisfaction, right? And we
exactly. So it started as a joke in Istanbul 2023 at the Autonomous Worlds Conference. And I was talking to a guy who goes by the name of Calcutator.
Yeah.
Shout out to you, Calc. And, we're kind of joking that, people get beef in the Discords, and it was like, it would be really cool if they could be like, I challenge you to a duel to settle it. You have besmirched my honor and I will see you upon the battlefield. So, it was like, cool, let's make a provably fair on-chain decision-making game, that's literally like, I challenge you to a duel and one or both of us aren't walking away from the duel. 3 outcomes. You win, they win, or you both lose. And let's make it fun, right? And so we basically like did a bunch of hand-drawn art and kind of gave it a bit of cheek, and you set in the Fool and Flintlock Tavern and blah, 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 and so, then we kind of like, it was just meant to be a really simple game. It was meant to be a little side project. And then we ended up working on it for 2 years. So, I'm doing a bunch of stuff, obviously, not just that. And, it's live on Starknet mainnet. You can go play it right now. It's free to play to a degree. We're adding a bunch more free to play stuff. So it continues to be free to play. But also it's really cheap if you want to keep playing it, and I think it's like, for a few dollars, you can play like, something like 15 to 30 games, and we pay for all of the gas. So, but it's just fun to a limited degree. And we have a bunch of plans on it. Like, I know exactly how to design the game to make it a lot more fun, but the current version, we wanted to design it so that it's one set of decisions made up front, because it's designed for that original joke, right? Like it's in a Discord and you want to challenge someone to a duel.
You just throw them the button to play Pistols at Dawn.
Yeah, so you can
that's how you determine who's right and wrong.
Yeah, you can just exactly right. So I've had people challenge me to a duel over a coffee. Josh in the Oz Builders community challenged me to a duel, and whoever wins had to buy the other a coffee, and I won, so he owes me a coffee. It's good. I've done giveaways with it, some really valuable assets actually. Like I've said, hey, if the next 3 people who beat me at this game, they're going to get this thing.
That's awesome. So like, for example, like we're having, we're at the pub having some debate about who's right or who's wrong. We can be like, let's just settle this Pistols at Dawn.
Settle it with honor.
Settle it with honor. And let's put something on the line. So you like, how the time someone's like, I'll bet you $5 or whatever the simple thing is.
You can do that.
This is the thing, right? So
provably fair. And then the results are there. You can refer to them, right? And we haven't gone down the composability route where we're like, made it really easy for any smart contractor to read the results. We'll do that at some point. But you could do that, or you can just refer to it, and at a human level and be like, hey, look, Lee, you owe me this thing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. You pay it up. Or you should be able to like lock it up and be like, well, you have to put your collateral in there, and the winner wins and the other one gets it back.
And
or you both lose.
It became a game that people seem to like to play competitively as well at the moment, which honestly was a complete surprise to me. I didn't expect that. So then there's some people who play it every day and they're competing on the leaderboard. So we put some like, crypto kind of prize mechanisms in there. So like the more people play, the prize pool gets bigger, and then the top 10 players each season win. But that's not really what the game's meant to be about. And honestly, I personally don't feel like the game's designed to have enough replayability that I would want to play it every single day. We have a version of it that would be a lot more fun, but it needs to be real time. So basically, like at the moment.
So talk us through a game. Like I challenge you to a duel because I don't know, you've upset me.
Yeah, or
And I'm like, you know what, we got to sort this out. Or we've had a debate about the nature of consciousness, and we just can't work it out.
That's right. We've got to settle it, and so we decided to settle it on the bloody dawn field behind the Fallen Flintlock Tavern, and so we both show up there with an antiquated flintlock pistol, one shot in the chamber, face back to back, and start taking steps 1, 2, 3, and the only honorable way to duel is to take 10 steps, turn and shoot. But of course, we're not honorable people. So one of us is probably going to turn and shoot the other one in the back. The question is, do they win or do they not? Do they then have to stand there and await their fate? And so that's more or less how the game plays out. At the moment, it's the simplest possible version of the game. So essentially, both players make some decisions up front about when they're going to shoot, when they're going to dodge, and then they get a couple of choices that support essentially what they predict is going to happen, but they might be wrong, right? Like all things in crypto. So then every step that the players take, we reveal a random card from a deck, and the deck's randomized at the point both players commit their moves. So it's a commit reveal game. So there's no way you can know what the other player is going to do until you're both committed, and then you reveal. We use cryptography for that. And there's also no way to know what the sequence of cards that are going to be drawn with are. Mm-hmm. So then every step we draw a card, and that card changes something about what might happen. For example, one of the cards means every shot from then on misses. And so, or they etc. And so like you might turn and shoot them in the back at the first step. And if you want that to work, you need extra damage, because you need 3 damage. You start with 1, you need 3 to kill them. Otherwise, you're just going to injure them and they're going to get to shoot you back. And so if you're trying to shoot early, you're going to probably want to be doing cards that give you extra damage. But then the first card that gets revealed, it might also give you more damage, or it might take it away. So it can be very unpredictable. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is you kind of like, sometimes you go, yeah, I'm going to win. Oh no, I'm going to lose. Oh yeah, I'm going to win. In one game, it just goes back and forth.
Seesaws, yeah.
Bit of spectacle. So that's basically how the game goes. And so there's a pistols round and a blades round. The blades round's a tiebreaker. So essentially, like if both of you are still alive, then you go and try and cut each other down. And then, then it's rock, scissors, paper, essentially. And if you both choose rock, you both die. That's basically how that works. And there's some interesting nuances in that, like the blades card you choose also gives you an advantage in the first round, but there's a sort of like the advantage that card gives you is usually the reverse of what you would want in the blades round. So for example, there's a card called Behead, and that gives you more damage. And so to counter Behead, you want a card called Grapple, which reduces damage. Mm-hmm. In the pistols round, that's good. But if you fail to win in the pistols round and it goes to blades, Behead beats Grapple. Okay. Right. So the card that you want to counter in the first round is also the worst card to choose for the second round. So you can kind of like choose, like, do I think it's going to make it to blades, in which case I'm going to choose that? Or do I think I'm going to, like, this is going to happen? And then you just get it hilariously wrong. Right. But that's one round of commit reveal. What we would like to do is make the real-time version where both players are there at the same time. Because at the moment you don't have to. You can make your move and they can respond 24 hours later. But if you're both there at the same time, now we can make it so you get to make a decision every step. And so you can see what changes. You can go, oh my God, they've got enough damage to kill me. Maybe they're going to shoot now. I'm going to dodge. But maybe you're like, no, wait, social deduction. We both know there's enough damage to kill. They probably think I'm going to shoot them. So they're going to dodge. So I'm going to do something else and I'm going to shoot them on the next round. But then you're like, no, wait, but they know that I know. So you just get this like, essentially an iterative Nash equilibrium, but like recursive social deduction.
Yes, totally. Yeah. Amazing.
So, it's fun, but it's also secretly a governance primitive, I guess.
It's pretty cool. How many people are playing it at the moment?
So it's soft launched, right? So we're not like out there marketing it or pushing it or anything. We've had about 1,200 players play it total so far, and it's averaging somewhere around 20, 30 players a day, I'd say, on average.
So just kicking off, but it's
people keep offering me big opportunities to put it in front of a big audience and stuff, and we could easily have driven a lot more people to it, but I'm like, no, it's not ready for that. Like,
okay.
I'm just taking my time because I can, making it good enough. So it is a fun game to play at the moment, but it has a bunch of, it's still got a bunch of bugs and features that are missing. And, it's not. I don't think it's like you wouldn't want to put it in front of a million people.
Do you have any Pistols at Dawn merch?
Yes, we have. It's very hard to come by.
I was going to say, like, how do I get my hands on some of this?
Well, are you going to be in Argentina for DevConnect?
Probably not.
The next opportunity to get some merch will be.
Gotta go to Argentina.
I want to give you an idea of how limited the merch is. They're going to be 10 shirts, including for the team.
Oh, so I've got to fight. I've got Pistols at Dawn.
There's almost no merch in existence. We've got a few stickers. I can definitely give you some stickers.
Yeah.
But I mean, also, like whatever. Give me an excuse. I'll run a little merch run.
Okay. Well, we'll have to challenge you at Pistols at Dawn for some merch.
Yeah, exactly. You should do that.
Mm-hmm. I'm throwing down. Yeah.
Pistols.gg. I'm Recipromancer everywhere. So I'm Recipromancer in the game. Go create an account. Challenge me to a duel. In the duel description, put free t-shirt. If you win, I'll give you one. I'll go and print one just for you.
Oh, I've demanded satisfaction. I've got myself a jewel. All right, I'm done. All right, I'm gonna post the results of this too.
Yeah, please do. It'll probably be hilarious. I bet you'll win, and it will be in a really funny way.
I hope so too, because I want this merch too. Because I'm imagining some period stuff. You've gone down to the character, not the word, the style. It's very much in theme.
We've got
some tongue in cheek to it.
We've got actually the merch for Argentina is in the style of a kind of a football jersey, but
like an Australian one or an American one, or the
like soccer, what we call soccer essentially.
Oh, okay, soccer. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
So it's got like the kind of like the big letters, like the team on the back, except the team is like Fockers United, like fully on-chain games. That's what a Focker is. And it's like sponsored by like Loot and blah blah blah.
Oh, dude, I'm so challenging you.
So it's.
I need some of this. I need this.
Yeah. So those are good. Those are going to be great little t-shirts. That's like the current round, and but rock and roll. Let's do it.
Oh, let's do it. How long have we got to go? I mean, we've gone for about an hour 40.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If anyone's still listening, now we've got to sneak in the secret spicy alpha for anyone that's still
listening.
Yeah.
Well, we don't need to wrap up unless you're getting hungry, which I'm not. But we can, I guess we do have, at some point we probably will have to wrap up. But I mean, how do you want people who are listening? So, I mean, once we ship this out, and it'd be great to get people who want to be obviously listening and get in touch with you. Do you want people to get in touch with you, or do you just prefer them just to, how do
about what?
Well, that's for you to let people know.
Yeah. So look, I'm not accurate. As an investor, I'm not actively doing equity rounds at the moment. Mm-hmm. I will consider token plays, but mostly I'm focused on my own crap, And I keep saying this and then going, actually, I'll invest in this thing, but I'm generally not that interested in people contacting me about investment opportunities. I've got too many anyway. Like if you're building fully on-chain games, I'd love to hear from you. It's an interesting community if I don't already know you. If you're going to be in DevConnect and want to kind of come and see a bunch of what the on-chain game community is building, that's going to be my focus in Argentina, is on the gaming side. One of my ex-employees who now runs Fockers, Nate, is running the whole gaming stage for DevConnect, which is cool. So that's going to be fun. And what else? I don't know. Oh yeah, I guess one of my other businesses is called Skogomore. We run validator nodes for networks like Thorchain, Chainflip, Ethereum, and Starknet at the moment, primarily. If you have Bitcoin, Ethereum, Thorchain, Chainflip, or Stark, and you want to contribute to the security of those networks and earn some fees, we can run those for you. So if that sounds like your jam, feel free to get in contact with us. And honestly, you can stake permissionlessly to our validator nodes on most of those networks anyway. But you could talk to me about that too. And I mean, look, just generally, if you want to talk to me about some of the stuff that I talk about, or you want help with something, then don't
be weird about it.
Yeah, message me. Right? I'm not going to promise you I'm going to respond straight away, but I generally do try to get back to people and be helpful, and so I do enjoy that, right? So please feel welcome to message me and ask me a question, and I'll.
Well, importantly, what question have I forgot to ask?
That's a good question. Well, I could shill some bags, I guess.
We've got time.
I mean, I know what I'm long on, right? But it's such a unique thing for everyone. I mean, Bitcoin and Ethereum are evergreen. I'm obviously into the gaming ecosystem. I've already mentioned daydreams. Cross-chain swaps is a big part of my portfolio, which is down horribly at the moment. So make of that what you will. I think privacy is like becoming part of the meta for good cause. I think, certain kinds of AI scaffolding are really interesting, but you got to be careful. But, that's just some like unassorted thoughts on the market. I don't like to predict that for other people, but I know what my bets are. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you haven't asked. I could probably talk for 17 hours about random things.
We'll have to get you back on again.
Maybe if there's like stuff that people want to hear more about, I'd be happy to come back and do more. And if everyone's like, oh my God, what did I just listen to? Then that's fine too.
We have, we have the weekly moonshot that we do. So Nick and I always run through the news. We're going to start getting guests on who are subject matter experts in the various things that we're talking about. And there's a stack of gaming stuff coming up. Yeah. So that's when we're got to save some good stuff for then. Yeah, I mean, like the Immutable boys are killing it at the moment. Like nice homegrown gaming infra. I love that. And there's just so much interesting stuff happening in gaming, so I think that could be really interesting. Yeah. Like I said, I thought the big theme for this bull run would have been probably gaming. I still think gaming is a huge thing. Obviously, you do too. But it turned out to be stable coins and US legislation. So far. But there's still plenty of time for the gaming thing to be. Look, it's definitely getting to its moment. Like if you look at the inflows, then like there's a lot of adoption now happening around gaming and gaming technology. It hasn't really transferred through to like price action on the whole yet. But like, and that's multi-headed. That's like big studios are building. You've got the legislation in the US that's like going to make game assets excluded from, certain regulatory hoops, which is honestly fascinating because I mean, like, what's the difference between a DeFi protocol and a game? You already know what's going to happen, right? Like, suddenly there's going to be a bunch of games. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah. Let the ruggings begin. And then that'll like probably like, mean that gets nerfed after a period of time and it's going to suck for all of the games that actually kind of needed that. But I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that's essentially like the wheel is getting greased for games to have that breakout moment. But don't quote me on it. Maybe it doesn't happen this cycle. Maybe it happens next cycle. I can just tell you that it's definitely getting to the part where it's ready. We've seen the lightning. We're waiting for the thunder. Yeah. And, and I personally think fully on-chain games are the most interesting part of it. Not like, not Web 2.5 games, which is just a normal game with some assets. I think it's like the actual disruptive properties of building, the server is on-chain. Maybe it's got some other bits, but that's where the logic is. Those games, those are really interesting to me. All right. Anyway. Check them out. All right. Well, thanks, Rob. We'll have you again on soon. And thank you again. Yeah, thanks for having me. We're going places. Yeah. So thank you again. Till next time. See ya.